How's it going, folks? My name is Ricky. I'm a senior coordinator here at BikeWorks. I use he, him pronouns, Chicano, Mexican American. Today we're going to be learning how to take a wheel off of the bicycle and how to fix a flat tire. Let's go ahead and look at the materials we're going to need for this fix. We will need our flat fixing kit, which includes our patch, sandpaper, cold vulcanizing fluid, ideally 2 tire levers, our combination wrench, need a rag, a floor pump, or a handheld pump like this. We also want to get familiar with our terminology. Here I have a front wheel on a BMX bike. The wheel is connected to your fork here. Your axle on your wheel will slide into what's called a dropout, and that is being held on by an axle nut. You've got your tire with an inner tube on the inside where you can see the valve here. You've got your rim, you've got some spokes, your hub, which has your axle going through that. So before we get into the actual fix, we want to go over what the right tool for the right job is. I have some examples here. I've got 4 wrenches here that all are around 15 millimeters in size. They all serve very different purposes, but it's going to be important for us to find the right tool because we don't want to damage the bike and then we don't want to damage our tools. We have your pedal wrench here, which is great because of its leverage power. So it's fairly long, it's very stout. Sometimes that might be overkill, so we don't want to risk damaging your bicycle by using something that has too much power. Your adjustable wrench benefits. You're able to adjust to whatever size nut or bolt that you're trying to tighten or loosen. The problem with it is that you might strip out your nut or bolt if it's not adjusted properly. We then have our cone wrench, which very similar to your combination wrench, but you'll see a slight difference in its width. The cone wrench is meant to slide into a particularly thin space, so it's not meant to be a powerful tool, but a precise tool. Last but not least, we have our combination wrench, which is slightly shorter than your pedal wrench, slightly thicker than your cone wrench, and a fixed size as opposed to your adjustable wrench. So this is the tool that we'll be using for removing your wheel. Typically, we will hear terms like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. What we like to do here is use the clock and think about it as clockwise or counterclockwise. Counterclockwise is to loosen, clockwise is to tighten. I have it at around 9 o'clock, and I can use gravity to help push this down and start loosening this. You can see here that this bicycle has washers with a hook on it. Those are in place so that you don't accidentally drop your wheel while you're riding if your axles do become loose. So we're gonna have to lift our wheel up slightly and remove those. You can maybe see those there. I'm going to take this thumbtack and give myself a flat. You're riding along on a nice, beautiful day, and you get a thorn in your tire. You can probably hear that. Bummer. We're gonna have to fix that. We can take our valve. There's a little needle in here that we'll need to access to get some of this air out quicker. And you'll hear that there. So I'm just using the tip of the tire lever to push that down. Here we have our tire lever. We're gonna slide it in between our rim and the tire. There's a wire in there called the bead. So here I'm using just one tire lever to kind of scoop it out. I've got it scooped out. The reason I have 2 tire levers here is because sometimes it might be easier to scoop out a bigger portion of your tire, which is going to make it easier for you to take your tire off. So as you can see there, this tire lever is being hooked on to the spoke, where I'm going to use this other one to slide the rest of it off. So now I have one side of the tire removed. So here I might be able to just lift up and pull the other side of the tire off, and then the valve comes out. Boom. So here we have our inner tube that we're able to just pull out, give it a good couple pumps. And I can already hear it. But if you're having trouble hearing it, using the sensitive parts of your face, so I can use my cheeks or my lips to feel where that hole is. You can actually, let's see if you can find it. We found our hole. Now I have to mark the hole. Got a ballpoint pen here, and I'm going to give a big X with the center of the X where the hole is. So as you can see right there. Boom. The next step is going to be using your sandpaper to sand down that area, wanting to clean the surface. You still want to be able to see the X, but it's roughened up. And at this point, I'm going to take some of this air out so I have a flat surface to work with. Use that tire lever again. So boom. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this vulcanizing fluid here. I have this glue, this vulcanizing fluid, that I'm going to lightly paint over. Right there. And I'm just going to actually let this sit and dry for a few minutes. What's actually happening here is your vulcanizing fluid is creating a chemical reaction between the two pieces of rubber, and it's creating fusion. So it's not actually gluing it together, but it's fusing it together. As you're letting your glue dry, you're gonna wanna look for what caused your flat in the first place. So this is where your rag comes in, and I'm gonna use this rag to safely kind of cover my hands and drag the rag within the tire to allow for any sort of sharp objects to get snagged in the rag, and then I can know where to locate the culprit for the flat. I use the thumbtack so there's nothing that's gonna be sticking out at me, so I can just kind of go around, and any gaps in your tire are cause for concern because that's a place where your inner tube can escape from. Sometimes sidewalls will have a tear in them, or if you like skidding on your tires, you might wear a hole down through your tire. So some other ways that we can get flats is caused by your rim. So the rim strip here is another protector of your inner tube that keeps your spokes from being able to pop your tire as well. So that's something that we want to keep an eye on to make sure that that's not a cause for your flat as well. So at this point, it's probably a good time to check up on your tube and see if it's dried out. What's up, folks? So I'm ready to apply my patch to the inner tube. I'm gonna avoid touching this area because I don't want to get my oils or any dirt or debris on to that clean surface. I want to take my patch here. It has an aluminum foil on the back, and I'm gonna remove that without touching the orange side of this patch and making sure that I make a clean connection when I put this on. I still want to center it. The X will help with that to make sure that you get it in the right spot. And what I'm doing now is I'm applying pressure to my patch So I'm gonna hold on to this for about 3 minutes. Not only are you applying pressure, so it's not like you can just put a stack of books on this, but your hands create heat, which help with the fusion and the chemical reaction of this process. Not a scientific fact, but it's something that we tell people, which who knows if it's true. So at this point, you've fixed your flat, and it's time to put a little bit of air in your tube to give it some shape to put back into your tire. It just needs to hold air and hold its shape, and then we'll insert it back into your tire. Boom, you want that valve hole to be centered. We'll put that in. And the important part here is that we are going to put your tire back on one side at a time. So there are 2 beads on your tire. So there's one on this side and one on the other. We want to put just one side at a time, because if you put 2 on at the same time, it's going to be almost impossible to put your tire back on. So I'm starting just with one side, which is the side closest to the camera currently. And boom, that side is on and this side is off. And now I'm going to start from the other side, and then a little different than last time, I'm going to start where the valve hole is, and I'm going to start putting it in. And notice that I'm not using a tool to put the tire on at this moment. The problem with using a tool is that you have the potential to pinch your tube and cause another flat. So as much as possible, we want to use no tools in this process. So this one was fairly easy to get back on. You're ready to go, right? Now, so you want to make sure that you're setting your air pressure to the right PSI, which is pounds per square inch. And let's see if you can see that right there. 35 to 40 PSI. So with this floor pump, it's got 2 different slots. One is for a French style Presta valve, and then the other is for an automotive Schrader valve. You will insert your valve and then lift up the lever. And I'm using my hands up at the top to kind of pinch the valve to keep it from going into the rim. Boom, pump it. And we're at 40 PSI. One of the things we do want to do before we put it back onto the bike is we want to make sure that your tire is seated correctly, that there aren't any bulges on the sides, and then we're ready to put it back onto your bike. So notice that I did not remove the axle nuts and the lawyer tabs. I just kind of left them sitting in there. What we're gonna do is we're gonna slide this back in. Some of the things that can get in the way are your brakes. So you wanna make sure that those are disengaged. Apply those lawyer tabs and start threading on your axle nuts. And what I'm doing is I'm actually lifting up into the dropout so that it sits as high as possible. You want the wheel to be center in your fork. Then once again, we're gonna use our combination wrench and turning clockwise this time. And then something that you can do, you can pull from one side to the other to make sure the axle is sitting as high as possible in the dropout.